Hey everybody, Pastor Shane here, and we are here again with our next episode in the Kingdom Life series. This one's in Matthew chapter 6, 19 through 24. It's episode 18, and we're going to be looking at the passage where Jesus famously says, lay up for yourselves treasure in heaven, okay? Now, of course, this is a part of his larger teaching, so rather than disconnect these statements, I think we should try to keep them connected with what Jesus has already said. Because if I'm honest with you, many of the sermons and teachings that I've heard on this subject did more waxing on what the preacher or the teacher thought that those treasures might be than connecting this teaching back with what Jesus has already said in this sermon. So now that doesn't mean that what Jesus says in these passages can't or doesn't introduce new thoughts for us. In fact, it does, but it doesn't do it disconnected from what has already been said. So I hope that makes sense. So what we're going to do, since this is a longer passage than we usually deal with at one time, we're going to do it like this. We'll break it up into three sections. And with each section, we're going to try to examine how it connects back to what's already been said. So let's get started, because we have a lot of ground to cover. So let's look at the first 19 through 21, those first three verses, okay? Here is what it says. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. All right. Now, it's noteworthy that in the Sermon on the Mount, before verse 19, Jesus has dropped the word reward 9 times, okay? And it's also kind of interesting that Matthew's gospel mentions rewards more than any of the other gospels combined. Maybe it was because he was a tax collector. I don't know. But for whatever reason Matthew may have had, the Lord used it as part of Matthew's gospel to instruct us. So what we have here then is a summary statement of all of the reward talk that has happened up until this moment. Okay? So it's also noteworthy to remember that the majority of Christ's followers are poor. I mean, they are poor people, all right? Impoverished. People in poverty are in survival mode at all times, okay? So money is a big part of the thought process of each day. And that even holds true into to the current day, to the present day. So as an example, okay, according to Dave Ramsey, behind, unfaithfulness, infidelity, money issues are the number one cited cause for divorces. So our money is definitely on our mind, okay? And Jesus is calling us to shift our focus about this, okay? So Jesus has been telling us again and again that the Father has rewards for those of us who will follow him faithfully. So earthly money can be stolen. It can be invested poorly, or even if you invest it wisely, it can be lost to natural disaster or financial collapse or recession. See, in this world, we have no guarantees that our treasures are going to be there tomorrow. So therefore, rather than spending all of our time worrying about the material issues of this life, we should lay up for ourselves treasures in heaven. So, and those treasures are, as Jesus says, secure from moth, rust, and thieves. So how do we do this? Well, he's already told us. And all we're going to do is look backward and connect it back to what he's already said in this sermon. You go back to Matthew 5:12. Those who endure persecution will receive a reward. 5:46. Love your enemies. It implies that there is a reward for loving those who hate you, because he says, what reward is there in loving those who already love you? Chapter 6, verse 4, righteous giving. The Father rewards us when we give righteously. 6:6, he rewards us when we pray righteously. 6:18, he rewards us when we fast righteously. And look, this list is not comprehensive, all right? But by no means. It's not even close to comprehensive. But the point is that the Father has rewards waiting for us when we live and walk by the Spirit, which, by the way, is the only way that you can actually do these things. I mean, and I've said this on repeat the entire time we've been in the series. You must live by the Spirit in order to do all these things that Jesus is laying before us. So if we spend our life putting away treasures in heaven, our hearts will be tuned into the things of God and not consumed by the temporary treasures of the world, which is what the last verse 21 in this section says. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. All right, so now let's look at the next two verses, 22 and 23. It says this: the eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? So, the eye of the body, or the eye is the lamp of the body. See, Jesus has already given us one analogy using an eye in chapter 5, verse 29. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out. See, there's an interesting analog between the eye and the heart in Jewish literature. Sometimes there are times when those two things are used interchangeably, and that's the case here. Jesus just said, "Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Then he flips the analog to eyes. The eye lets in light. Our eyes will be fixed upon whatever it is that we treasure most, like the heart. So if our eyes are consumed with things of the world, then the light that we're letting in is still darkness, and it will fill our entire being. See, the point shouldn't be hard for us to figure out. The eyes and the heart have such an intertwined relationship that they are in locked step with each other. Whatever the heart loves, or the eyes will look at it, all right? And whatever the eyes gaze upon, the heart loves. And so that relationship is reciprocal. And so it's critical. This is critical for us to understand. Do you want a measuring stick for your spiritual life? What does your heart love? And where are your eyes gazing? See, it's a sure bet that they're focused on the same things. That's why Jesus chose these things to make his point. They both encapsulate the condition of a person's spiritual life. All right, let's look at verse 24, last verse. No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. So this is Jesus' final point on the issue of reward. So basically he says you can't have it both ways. You either serve money and rewards in this life, or you serve the Lord and you store up treasure in heaven. See, it's clear and it's simple, except that we seem to mess up the simplicity of this. See, there was a time in my life where I wondered why Jesus had to make this such a either or kind of binary choice. Either this or that, no compromise. And I'm not the only person to have wrestled with this either. And the best answer I have at this point in my journey is this: is because of the flesh. See, because of the flesh, we have to go all in. The best illustration maybe I can give you is wild baboons. Okay. See, the first time I traveled to South Africa, I was warned, don't feed the baboons. Okay. See, apparently, if you begin feeding them, they'll keep wanting more until you run out. And then when you run out, they're likely to get upset and maybe violent with you. So I just chose not to feed them, okay? And later that day, after I received that warning, as we were leaving a park that we had been visiting, I witnessed this. Some guy across the parking lot started feeding a baboon, and he ran out of food, and then the baboon perched on top of his car, and it wouldn't let him get in to leave. See that, to me, that's a picture of our flesh. You feed it a little, and it'll never be satisfied. stop feeding it, and it'll throw a tantrum like a baboon. So the best choice is to not feed it at all. And when it comes to treasures, Jesus tells us to go all in for the kingdom. And it's for that very reason. If you try to ride the fence on this issue, you'll never give the kingdom what it deserves. And eventually, you'll start feeling annoyed or just plain angry when the discussion of giving comes around. And we'll get deeper into this in another episode, but not only does Jesus tell us to go all in for the kingdom, but he promises that if we do, every material need that we have on this earth will be met as well. So now the question often comes up, what exactly are these rewards? Well, here's the thing. Jesus never says what they are. In all of the New Testament, the closest answer we can get that I can point you to is crowns. Okay, crowns. But even those crowns are going to be tossed back at the feet of Jesus. We see that in Revelation. When we see him personally and we get our reward, we're just going to get that crown, that particular reward. We're just going to give it back to him. Now, personally, I tend to believe that our rewards go beyond crowns, but I'm not going to speculate a lot with it here with you about it, because I think because what I think they are doesn't really matter. Okay. No, but I'm going to give you a little peek into my thinking here. The new heaven and the new earth that we will inherit is going to be an existence that we really don't have a frame of reference for. Okay. I just believe that our rewards will be as wonderful and as expansive as our existence in the new heaven and new earth will be. Which means I can't really explain it to you or to myself for that matter. It's just a belief for something far above and beyond what my mind can imagine. I mean, eye has not seen nor has ear heard the things that the Lord has prepared for those who love him. And I understand that the next sentence in that verse is, but the Holy Spirit has began to show us these things. I get that, but I still think that there's so many things that we just can't conceive of. So now, with that said, we're done for today. Okay, and as always, I hope this has been helpful. Next time, we're going to wrap up chapter 6 and deal with a hot button issue, and we're going to deal with anxiety. Okay. I'll spend some time preparing for this because I think that there's confusion between what the Bible calls anxiety and what our culture has labeled, we'll just say, clinical anxiety. So that's where we're heading, and I promise you I'm going to be gentle with it, and we're going to deal with it thoroughly. But I'm going to prepare, and so just give me some time to get ready for this. So until then, grace and peace.